There is a Colorado-based real estate investment team with international assets in the tens of millions of dollars that has recently gotten into the Airbnb or short-term rental space, and now they want into rental arbitrage. We're going to introduce you to one of the gentlemen from this team. We're going to talk about their investment strategy and why, even with all of their massive success and their large 200,000 subscriber YouTube channel, why do they like rental arbitrage right now? My name's Rakidzich. This is Airbnb Automated. Let's jump in. Airbnb family, YouTube world, welcome back. So I am excited to bring you this video. This is a rare thing for us. We rarely do collabs. The only collab we have done to date, aside from this, was actually Sam from Life Afar in Colombia. And this time I'm actually bringing you a real live, hyper successful American-based real estate investor who is both an Airbnb host and a coach, kind of like us here at Airbnb Automated. And we're going to talk about some really interesting concepts in real estate that I don't ever get to touch on because, as you guys know, I don't buy property and I don't leverage credit. So over a series of a couple, maybe even a few videos, this gentleman, Matthew Pillmore, is going to talk to you about some things that I'm not qualified to speak about, but it's an exciting time in real estate to know some new topics, to expand your skill set. And so I actually kind of want to introduce him first before we get into his accolades. I don't want to oversell this guy because this guy is sharp. This guy's cool. So again, Matthew, thank you so much for joining this, what is kind of like a podcast, if we can call it a podcast. Say hi to the Airbnb family.
What's up, everybody? So I'm one of you guys. I'm excited to be here. I'm a fan first. So Sean, thanks for having me.
It's absolutely a pleasure. So just so all of you know, Matthew has been watching the Airbnb channel because they actually low-key have picked up an Airbnb property in Colorado a little over a year ago because, of course, as a real estate investment company, it's important to stay innovative and to kind of know all financial instruments out there. So the first thing I'd actually like to ask you, Matt, is why did your team decide to create an Airbnb space? What was your logic coming in? What's your motivations? And where do you think this is going to go from here?
Yeah, sure. No problem. So, why did I get into real estate in the first place? Same reason I got into short-term renting in the first place. Same reason I do most things in the first place when it comes to business and scaling my personal and business financing. It's all about cash flow for me. And that's something that, if anybody that chooses to visit our channel will learn very quickly. For me, I've learned very quickly that the amount of money that I have left over at the end of each month makes a direct impact on how much freedom I have. Some people call it financial freedom. I got kind of burned out on that term myself. So I started calling it freedom of choice just to psychologically understand it a little bit better myself and being able to have as many choices in life as possible. And it boiled down to that single number every single time. So we focus on growth of cash flow more than anything else. And that wasn't always part of our prioritization process, but we learned the hard way, especially during the last downturn. So that's why we stepped into the short-term rental market, because we see the cash flow potential while also still being able to really optimize our lifestyle objectives more so than really almost any other business opportunity that I've explored so far personally. So
that's killer. So two things, lifestyle and cash flow, I think are some things you said here. So your group has been investing for like decades. You guys have, Master Yoda level experience. You guys have been in the game a while. So your priority has been cash flow lately. And so I'm assuming a lot of your recent deals, like even because you buy a lot, obviously you guys have just been buying and you buy for the sake of cash flow here. So just so my audience understands, because a lot of us, we don't buy things. Give us an example like of a really cool deal that you guys have recently done that's like this cash flow specific reason to purchase a property.
Well, one of the things I like to make sure I do on my channel is help people learn from my mistakes. So while it's probably my worst investment of all time, I would describe it as the coolest deal because it taught me the most by way of recognizing the significance of cash flow versus buying for speculated appreciation. And I think now is a time in history that we're going to be learning this once again. So it's really, really important that people are focusing their efforts on the right types of wealth creation, because not all cash flow is created equally. Back in 2007, November of 2007, I actually picked up a fourplex. And, I talk about this embarrassingly on my channel because it's not something I'm proud of, but I was emotionally invested in this purchase. And I think that's something that happens with the best of entrepreneurs, is we get really wrapped up and motivated by certain projects, and we almost seemingly can't stop ourselves. Okay. Even if that little voice in our head is kind of chattering at us saying, something might not be right here. And that's how it was. I went forward with this thing. I chose not to consult with my mentorship team at the time, probably because I deep down knew that they would try and talk me out of it. And I bought the property for $315,000. I held on to it, but unfortunately 6 very short months after I purchased it, 2 model matches directly next door to me sold for $135,000 each. Now, if you understand anything about appraisals, you know that comparable sales are how values are determined. And comparable sales are usually based on similarities between the properties, how close they are in proximity to your property, and how recently they sold. Those are the 3 general factors that are most heavily weighed into the value of your home. Well, when you have 2 that sold next door that were exactly the same yesterday for $135,000, that pretty well determines that the property value that I now had for my fourplex was $135,000. So within a span of 6 months, I lost $180,000 in value. That was my very first awakening that, equity positions and supposed inevitability behind appreciation was nothing more than, a wishful thinking. And the property at that time only cash flowed $150 per month. So it really wasn't, that was collectively between all 4 units. That, I was hoping for appreciation. It just wasn't the reason I bought it. I did not buy it for cash flow. And looking back on that now, it really changed the forecast of the next 3 to 4 years worth of my investing in what was arguably the best time to be buying real estate. And it affected me negatively because of that. So from that point forward, our buying decisions were totally different. It was all about cash flow, and the gravy on top was any appreciation that we got, any growth of value. And frankly, value is just sort of sitting there anyway, unless you're willing to leverage it and use it towards other cash flow generating purposes. And so that was really the coolest deal that I suppose I got, even though it was really kind of a flop.
Yeah, I agree that you really only learn from your failures, right? So this is a prime example of, like, you did something, you paid your dues. Your college degree in real estate investment was what, $180,000 in equity loss, you said?
Well, and arguably, the opportunity costs that I sacrificed as a result of having gotten into the wrong property based on missing, again, the best window of opportunity. Now, I did not foreclose on that property, and I really struggled morally because, in business, I think all you really have is your integrity. And I did, after making the bad purchase decision, consult with everybody that I could possibly involve in what should I do with this now conversation. And 11 out of 12 people said, you should try and negotiate with the bank. The one person said, you sign the dotted line, you should pay it. And I thought to myself, if the bank is willing to negotiate with me on any type of a short sale on this property, then I can morally stand behind that because they're at least involved in the conversation. It's not like I set the keys in the mailbox and walked away, right? And so the bank happened to be open to that conversation, and it unfortunately required me to go through the formal short sale process, which requires you to start missing mortgage payments. I had 9 missed mortgage payments hit my credit. Now, I've been known as a credit scoring expert since I was 24 years old. And this was a huge hit to me to have to go through that experience. But I thought to myself, hey, I can recover from this because of my knowledge about credit. And I did. Within 1 year, I was back up over 700. But unfortunately, because you have these mortgage rates that sit on your report for 7 years, ultimately banks still don't want to lend you money, even if your scores are high again. And as it turns out, even though they accepted $135,000 as a sale price on that to a new buyer, it made it very difficult for me to get into the buying game again, like I would have if I had not gone through the decisions that I did. And looking back, would I short sale it again? Probably not, but it's not an easy answer. Obviously, I'm struggling even to say right now, but in retrospect, I probably would have kept it and just bitten the loss of value and just eaten that myself. But that was a huge learning experience. And one of the reasons that once short-term rentals came into the picture, and especially now arbitrage, our attention has certainly been grabbed because we love the cash flow potential here with such a minimal out-of-pocket obligation. It's really fascinating for us.
Yeah, that's killer. Well, I'm sorry you had to short sell your property. I'm going to do an overlay for any lingo that people may not understand. We're just going to overlay so we don't have to ask you to re-explain things. There's a lot to learn there. I think I get real estate, especially when you invest long-term and you're buying and you're putting your 20% down payments. There's so much to know because there is hardy risk in buying property that there's just a boundless amount of knowledge that you really have to comprehend to effectively buy real estate. And I think you just kind of showed that. So you're in an Airbnb right now, one of yours.
I'm sitting in it right now. I'm living in it. I'm quarantined in it, baby.
Nice. What do you normally collect per night, average?
I average around 400 a night.
Okay. And then in prime times, you could get more, but 400 is your average?
Prime time, I can get 1,000 a night for it.
Nice. That's cool. And so you've been turned on to this hyper big cash flow of Airbnb properties, short-term rentals. Are you on other channels outside of Airbnb for this one property?
I actually am not even on Airbnb.
Oh, really? Let's talk about that. Where are you listed?
I had a really, really bad experience with Airbnb, as do many people. Yeah. So I am not a huge advocate of Airbnb. If anybody wants to be on it, I certainly understand why, being that they are the largest, but I only VRBO mine. And that's the only platform that I'm on outside of just periodically self-promoting it through my own links. But outside of that, it's purely VRBO.
That's awesome. That's really cool. What's your average occupancy? How many days a month do you get filled up with VRBO? And also, where are you? Because I think that matters.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'm a Colorado native. I purchased the property not specifically just for cash flow, but because I'm a lifestyle educator. So I look at money, and everything I teach about money is seen only as a tool in order to help me really literally achieve living every day exactly how I want to. And so one of the concepts that had come to mind shortly before acquiring this specific property was this idea of having a lifestyle asset, which I couldn't achieve with long-term rental properties. I was not able to use those properties, obviously, for my own enjoyment. And this property happened to be in a town outside of Denver, about 2 hours away in the mountains. Having come here for the very first time of my life, about 18 months ago, I fell in love with it and said, we're going to buy there. And in order to really justify the purchase, we wanted to basically pick it up as sort of that second home for ourselves that we were able to enjoy and rent it to a point where we were still able to pull away, compared to what we do with our long-term rentals, a remarkable amount of cash flow and still enjoy it 10 to 15 days of the month. So if I can pull 15 to 20 days rented and use it the rest of the time, then I'm thrilled. Cool.
And I take it yours is pretty seasonal because it's probably based on like ski season. Is that right?
This is a summer mountain town. It's actually world renowned for white water rafting and mountain biking, and so it is still popular in the wintertime because there are two world-class hot springs that are within 10 minutes of the front door of the house. So, it does have a draw during the winter season, but it is not a ski town. It is a summer mountain activity town, which is better for me anyway. Again, that was something that appeals more to me. I'm not a huge cold weather guy myself. And I kind of gave up snowboarding a long time ago. So at this point, it's been perfect for us. I mean, we truly bought it only for us, while looking and recognizing all of the financial capabilities that it could bring as well. It was kind of a comprehensive analysis for reasons why we bought it.
Killer. That's really cool. So I think at this point, here's my curiosity then. So you guys have been buying. That's like your specialty. You've had a taste of like the revenue or the cash flow from short-term rentals. Why, with that said, knowing that, like, I guess housing prices could drop and it could be the good time to buy property soon, like, there's speculation for that too, like that buying could be great soon. And of course I wouldn't know, I'm not the expert there. So you might actually tell me I'm wrong, which is totally cool. But why rental arbitrage now? Like what brings you to this point? And is it now specifically, or is it just rental arbitrage in general?
That's a great question. So being that this is our first short-term rental, we went about it completely differently than what you teach on your channel. And I honestly have been kicking myself after discovering your channel and really researching more behind the concept. By the way, kudos to you, man, because you're not the only guy that I researched this concept through. In fact, I've even paid for products on this concept. And you're by far the best guy out there teaching on this subject. And so having binge watched a lot of your content and really seeing what's possible inside this model, I look back on the way we went about doing this, which cost us, $250,000 of cash, because we did put a large down payment. I'm somebody that believes in leverage, but I hate debt at the same time. I believe in using credit scores and so forth. And, I went about furnishing this place top to bottom. I provide everything from, Q-tips to high-end organic lotion to all organic, fully stocked spice cabinet in the kitchen. I mean, it is truly everything you could imagine coming into an Airbnb provided for our guests. So I wanted the best guest experience I could get, but it was really, really expensive. And so I look back on, the financial opportunity whereby the lifestyle design concept sort of overlapped the best returns on investment. And certainly we sacrificed there in some ways. Would I do it over again? Yes. But would I repeat this every single time? Absolutely not. More so, I would be looking for ways of accommodating the lifestyle design aspect where I could have short-term rentals in other areas I'm passionate about, other areas that I'm in love with geographically. But I wouldn't go over the top like this, and I would really be following strictly your model that you teach here on the channel. And so I look at the Airbnb arbitrage model, or short-term rental arbitrage model, as a way of taking that same $250,000 of availability, which many, many people don't have access to, and scaling that out. I mean, if I could 10 times the amount of what I did here, obviously my opportunities would be so much larger from a revenue and cash flow based standpoint. And that's what we're really going to be looking into moving forward. There have been other educators that were teaching about looking into only furnished properties. We did explore some of that based on the product that we bought. We went pretty hard at it for about 3 months and didn't have success with it. And I think mostly because we were following recommendations that weren't quite so practical. I mean, it was mostly single fam. And again, it was mostly furnished, which really limits the pool of opportunity. And so much of what I've picked up from you has kind of discouraged away from what that product we paid for suggests doing. And so I love that. Listen, I don't look at that investment of, $2,000 I think we paid for it as a waste of money, even though we didn't literally make $1 yet from doing anything that was suggested in there, because all it did was further our exploration, our research to find people like you. And so that's just part of the cost of development as a business owner. I'm completely fine with all of that. And in fact, by the way, I've been pushing you, man, since the very limited amount of time we've known each other one-on-one. you know, people like me, we want your product, man. I want your product. I will buy your product. You got to get something out here, because I know you're the guy that says, I don't sell things and screw the people who do. But listen, some of us learn well from that stuff. And some of us really, you know, the right product, once it comes along, is the one that makes me my next million per year. And, you know, I am the type of guy that diversifies into businesses that, you know, if they don't have at least $1 million per year potential, I'm not even interested in it. And I know this one does. And I see it firsthand that you've done it. And so I want to just get involved in that, whether it's coaching or a product or, you know, anything that you put out, you know, I'm definitely going to be a buyer.
Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. Thanks. And you're not the only one who's asked for a course. We've been working on it, but you know, it's tough when you're so busy actually doing things, trying to make something like a course on the back end. It's such a long horizon return on investment that I've just rather been running my businesses. But I promise one will be coming soon, and you don't even have to buy it. We'll just split your million a year 50-50 instead of you buying the course. We'll just split your profits.
I tell you, you better be offering that, because some people will take you up on it. It's a much better way to go.
You know, and that's the thing is, I guess in the buying real estate world, JV partners happen all the time. People bring on advisors like, hey, could you help us with this deal? We'll cut you in an equity. I mean, it's actually not an unheard of thing. So, yeah, who knows? I was speaking with a guy who does consultations for consultants, and he's saying that a lot of people are, you know, they want a course just to have time with the expert. You know, it's not even necessarily about the course product all the time. It's about having access to that person's brain to ask like unique questions. So I'm coming around on the idea. But what I find really, we're gonna have to cover this on another video so this doesn't go 2 hours, but what I find super interesting is your belief systems with credit. And so I guess I just kind of like a teaser for the future video. You consult, you coach people, right? You coach people on you have a YouTube channel, 205,000 subscribers, VIP Financial Education, which I obviously will link in the description below. Good stuff, by the way. And you then turn that into an opportunity to coach people further, and your core of your system is credit to cash flow, right? And I don't do credit. So before we get into the big, long next video, what would you tell the world at this point they need to understand about your philosophy of approach?
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not the person that invented the concept of leverage. It just boils down to having access to tools that can help speed you along. It's no different than driving a vehicle. It's no different than using a table saw. You know, there are obvious risks, inherent risks that come along with these types of shortcuts. And that's why you have people like Dave Ramsey that are so adamantly teaching people to avoid them. But you also have the other side of the spectrum where you've got Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Army that are, you know, saying you should basically remain in debt your entire lives. And I'm somewhere right in the middle of that. And so my concept is literally an entire career of 20 years, 21 years now, of teaching how to ride and toe that line, where I hate debt as much as Dave Ramsey does, but I'm not avoiding it, right? I just hate the downsides of debt, just like I would hate cutting my finger off like my dad with a table saw. My dad cut his finger off. It's like, okay, does that mean that I should never use them? No, it just means understanding the risk, avoiding chopping off limbs, of, you know, wearing your seatbelt. These are smart things to do when you're looking for a faster way of getting somewhere. And I do think that Dave Ramsey appeals to a big audience of people who are fiscally irresponsible with their money. You should not be tapping into resources if you are incapable of using that resource for things outside, or if you're incapable of using it for only building wealth. If you're using it for consumer-based purchases, you're not the right person for these concepts. And that's a large percentage of our population, unfortunately. The people that are watching your channel, that's not them, man. I mean, I'm in the comments section. I see the level of sophistication and intelligence that follows your channel. These are business owners. Business owners aren't people who need to be babysat with whether or not they're using credit cards in order to maximize their rewards points. I should be able to get thousands and thousands of dollars back every single year, and refuse to believe that I should never use a credit card again. I'm never going to believe that. But on the other side of it, I don't want to have decades and decades and decades worth of debt. And the second I started to accumulate massive debt, look, I came from $600,000 of non-mortgage related balances. It was terrifying. And you know what? I looked at Robert Kiyosaki at that point and said, this guy's out of his mind, right? I'm not going to borrow my way to wealth. I have to find a way to sort of hack the banking system. And that's what we teach on our channel is hacking the banking system. So I'll do another video with you. I call it, it's a 3-step process. I call it the 3 C's of banking and borrowing. It's credit, capital to cash flow. Credit, capital to cash flow. And anybody can do it. But again, if you're fiscally irresponsible, this isn't going to be for you. If you are fiscally responsible, this is a great way to tap into the banking resources and have the shortcuts, but also significantly reduce the cost of interest along the way. I mean, I cut 80% of long-term interest costs out of my life entirely. I pay houses off in 5 years or less, and I own them free and clear. And I think your method of using short-term rental arbitrage in order to get into long-term net worth assets is what people should be doing. I think take all the money you can make from a short-term net cash flow standpoint and plow it into long-term net worth hard assets like long-term real estate. If you own a property free and clear, on top of all the short-term arbitrage properties you're doing, you can build a portfolio on both sides that creates lifetime wealth. And it's not just lifetime wealth, it's legacy wealth that you can pass along to your kids and to whomever else you want. So that's really my concept on this.
Yeah, that's actually really compelling and interesting. And there are other people who've been constantly trying to convince me to start buying property. They're like, when are you going to start buying, Sean? I'm like, well, when I can't scale fast anymore, right? But there is that point. And that I think this really kind of fits in with what you're saying is, yeah, I've taught people how to get in for really cheap, to pick up a property in 5 and 10, obviously in my case 100, and you can snowball that up, and then now you've got like millions of dollars a year in revenue, and then you can buy property. And there's benefits to owning property at that point, right? You've got like tax write-offs. There's like big tax write-off benefits. And of course, debt pay down. You have a different nature of real estate, so you're not in just one way, which I mean diversifies your exposure to the market. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of stuff that we haven't really covered on this channel yet, but it sounds like we're going to start covering because we've got you here to help.
There's no reason to not at least cover it. I mean, look, if you can build yourself to tens of thousands per month in short-term net cash flow, this is what I call the wealth ladder. It's 3 rungs. First rung is short-term net cash flow solutions, which is exactly what you provide. Second rung is scaling that out so that you can literally generate tens, if not hundreds of thousands of extra surplus dollars every single month. Third rung, invest in the long-term net worth assets, which are not short-term net cash flow solutions. Buying a long-term rental property is not a short-term net cash flow solution, contrary to what a lot of investors wish they were getting. That's what I thought it was for a long time. I'm thinking it's the end-all be-all. Guess what? It's not the end-all be-all. I could barely move the needle. Every time I bought something, I'm like, my life is not only the exact same from a financial standpoint, but it's worse because of the headache that I have to deal with from crybaby tenants and leaky toilets. So at the end of the day, you have to have such a big portfolio, but when you're making tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands more every month than you need, and you're plowing that into real estate that you can pay off in just a couple short years, the property I own now is free and clear. It's easy. We're living in a pandemic where my renters are having a hard time figuring out how to pay. It's nothing more than a nuisance for me. It's an inconvenience, but it's not a risk. I'm not in any way, shape, or form, in trouble like many long-term landlords would be when they're highly leveraged because they're trying to put as little down as they have to, and they're doing it across as many properties as they can. So this is my concept on it. Look, there are a lot of ways of skinning the cat, but I hate debt and I love leverage, and I show how you can do both at the exact same time.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for this first video. This was highly educational to me, and I know that this future video that we're going to do on credit is probably going to blow my mind because I of course have intentionally kind of dove into just snowballing cash instead of ever wielding credit. So who knows, you might make a believer out of me on this in the next video. I'd like to ask one last thing as kind of like just a fun question to end this one, because everybody really wants to know and people kind of get my opinion from my side. But as a team, because obviously there's like 5 of you here who've bought like hundreds of properties, what do you think the next 6 months is going to look like? If you're going to just, make a fortune cookie speculation on kind of how you think things are going to go real estate wise in the next 6 months, what would you think?
Well, obviously I have absolutely no idea any more than anybody else does. And I think containing it into 6 months is even trickier. Some people are predicting a V recovery. Others are predicting a W recovery. Other people are predicting a U-shaped recovery. I'm in the I have absolutely no clue space of any of that, but I will say that if I had to give a long-term estimate on what's going to happen with the housing market in general, I am of the opinion that it's screwed, man. It's screwed. I don't see how it can avoid another downturn, given that we now have somewhere close to 30 million people filing unemployment, new filings of unemployment in just the last seven or so weeks. That alone, that one statistic alone, has such a tremendous domino effect that will create this longer term challenge of repayment and sustainability in terms of payments, whereby people are, adopting these new, it's like almost 900 billion in forbearances on mortgage payments right now. These mortgage companies are offering 3 months that are then extended to 6, that are then extended into 12. I did a video on my channel where I called my mortgage company on the only mortgage I have right now to just see what the experience was like to do a forbearance. It took me 10 minutes for them to say, oh, you don't have to pay for 6 months. And in 6 months, we'll reevaluate. And at that point, we can extend another 6 months. Well, think about that, Sean. In 3 months, everybody that's done a 3-month forbearance is going to owe all 4 months at one time. Mm-hmm. These are people that are already in many cases living paycheck to paycheck as is. You think they're going to be able to come up with 4 months? No. So they're going to extend to 6. You think at the end of that 6 months, they're going to come up with 7 suddenly? No, this isn't some magic wand that's going to come into their life and offer them the job of a lifetime when they're unemployed. And now you get into that 12-month phase. And to make matters even worse, my mortgage company was willing to accept paying my escrow for me too, which means that my taxes and insurance are covered by my mortgage company. So all those people that are not going to be able to pay that 13th month, all 13 months at once, which by the way, on this house would be $35 some odd thousand I would have to come up with. That means that they're then going to have to figure out, do we do loan modification for this borrower? Is the government going to come in and bail us out again somehow? And if not, if neither of those two things happen, then they're going to have to proceed with short sales and foreclosures all over again, which then starts the comparable sales in your neighborhood process, where if that only happens 3, 5, 10 times around you, your house has now dropped in value by 100, like me, 180 grand in 6 months. And then you're going to have people that say, I don't even want my house anymore. And yes, everybody was graced with this better lending environment where the banks were saying, hey, you have to have 20% down. So everybody has 20% equity in their homes right now. Who cares if the property drops by 30, 40, 50%? My house dropped by 60. My fourplex was 60% drop. So at the end of the day, my fear is that we're starting to see this irreparable situation where even the government won't be able to buy us out of this mess. And if that doesn't lead to a mortgage crisis and a housing crisis again, I'm going to be shocked. I will tell you this, if that happens, there will be that many more opportunities for everybody. It will actually be a good thing. Looking back on it in the future, you're going to look back and go, I wish I did more then. And it will, beyond that, also be something that I think, is good for the market in general. I think that people, if it doesn't happen, everything I teach you on the next video will still make you better prepared. Even if for some reason we do experience the V recovery or the U recovery and we go back up, everything I teach is only going to make you, it's like collecting fire, right? You see a storm coming over the horizon, and it's like that show Naked and Afraid, right? These people are kind of like, oh man, this big storm's coming. We should go collect firewood. Are you in trouble because you went and collected firewood, if the storm blows past you and doesn't hit, was that a waste of time? No, it just means you have extra firewood. You're just better prepared anyway. So that's what my philosophies are going to teach. There's no downside to it. I just think now's the time to be preparing for anything.
Cool. Do you have any recommended reading, any recommended videos that you would say that this channel should watch to better understand the nature of what it is that you just explained? Do you have anything on your channel or on another channel you think that people should watch to understand real estate basics more?
Look, I think if you're not somebody that's understanding the power of leverage, you have to be absorbing what Robert Kiyosaki is teaching. But if you're somebody like me that can accept the idea of leverage, but also still hates debt, which I found is a huge portion of the population, that you're going to want to swing back to my channel after really becoming familiar with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series and acknowledging that there is tremendous value in other people's money so that you can hedge your way into margins of returns where you're borrowing money for a lot less than what you can generate with that money. That concept is something you really have to know, understand, and realize that if you can't create wealth out of that concept, it's purely because of a lack of responsibility on your part. And that's where most people are, is that we just don't have the self-control to avoid the impulsiveness of online shopping or going out and buying a car or whatever the case may be. It's just a matter of realizing that you can use that to create insane amounts of wealth, extraordinary wealth. I, like you, have built wealth to the tune of hundreds of thousands per month with the use of leverage and debt. Now, you obviously were able to do that by avoiding the leverage and debt along the way. I've tapped into it and exploited it along the way and then paid off all my debt. So that $600,000 worth of debt I had, we paid it to zero in record time. Same thing with properties. Again, once we were able to generate that result we were going for, we were able to get rid of the debt and didn't have to subscribe to this idea of, well, a mortgage should be 30 years. I don't believe that. I think that's foolish. So I would start with Robert Kiyosaki, keep it simple. And he's putting out a lot of really good content on YouTube finally. He, for whatever reason, was slow to show up to that game, but I've seen his stuff now. And I think you got to at least hear it, understand it. And then again, I think swing the pendulum slightly back somewhere to the middle of that spectrum of believing in the idea of staying in debt.
Cool. So your channel kind of builds off of some basic understandings that people can get like elsewhere, like Rich Dad or Bigger Pockets, and then you're like intermediate, advanced level stuff.
Including even Dave Ramsey, right? And he's one of the biggest educators in the space on financial management. But again, I think so basic that he's really going to be targeting that sort of entry level audience. And you can create wealth by being really traditionally conservative, by going to work for 40, 45 years and investing in your traditional IRAs and 401ks and just doing it the really slow, methodical way. There's nothing wrong with that, but it was never good enough for me. I want to figure out how to create absolute freedom absolutely as quickly as possible. And that's just the rebel in me. And it's, if somebody's listening and they can relate to that rebellious nature where I don't want to be 65 when I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, wherever I want, for as long as I want, be as generous or selfish as I want to be and never worry about the price tag of anything, then that wasn't going to work for me. Mm-hmm. And that requires tools. That's like saying, well, you could die in an accident, so I'm going to go back to riding a horse. Okay, well, guess what? You're going to get to everywhere a lot slower than everybody else. And by the way, you could fall off a horse too. So you should probably just walk. Right? I mean, if Dave Ramsey was consistent about his message, he would encourage people to stop driving.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. That's killer. There's a book called Freakonomics that actually talks about statistics and where people are like completely wrong about stuff. And the data is per mile, people die more walking home drunk than driving drunk.
Is that really?
Yeah, but I mean, that's a drunk driving stat. I don't know what the deaths per mile walked are compared to sober driving, but it's just, fun stats. Like, we do take too much for granted because we learn by analogy. We were raised to learn things. We have older brothers, parents, all sorts of people that mentor us. And we have, older colleagues that are more wise in our first job. And we come with all of this information that is still biased from somebody else's personal experience. And then now here we are in our 20s, 30s, 40s, forced to relearn from scratch the truth about money, about credit, about real estate, about the economy. Because obviously, I said in a previous video, if the experts knew what was going on, we wouldn't be in this situation, right?
That's a good point.
Like, because people don't want this to happen. Like, the world does not want a pandemic and an economic collapse. So with that logic, if people were good at this and actually knew everything, we would have steered clear. We would have found a way around it. But so that just proves that no one is a true expert in enough categories to be your source of information, and you should not just blindly listen to anybody.
I 100% agree with you. And just CYA, man. CYA. You know, my dad's an Eagle Scout, right? And at the end of the day, it's all about prep. Were you a Boy Scout?
No, I made the Boy Scout reference in a video. I was never a Boy Scout.
I heard somewhere that you might have been a Boy Scout, but anyway, it's just all about preparing and being super safe. I mean, you'll hear what I talk about in some videos and confuse it for aggression, when ultimately everything I talk about it boils down to being ultra conservative and being super, super safe about everything we do. So definitely check that out. 2 resources that I would like to give away to your audience as well, if it's okay with you.
Perfect.
First one is go to cashflowcruncher.com. We've tried to create the single best budgeting tool available. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's an advanced tool, very simple to use, however. It'll help you guys actually crunch all of your cash flow numbers. Second resource, we do give 1 free coaching session away to everybody on our YouTube channel. I see no reason why you guys can't have access to that as well. So you can go to freecoachingcalendar.com and you'll have a 1-hour consultation with me directly. It's a non-solicitous conversation. We don't sell anybody, just like Sean doesn't. Our services of coaching don't work for people that I have to convince that it's a good idea to have somebody with experience sitting next to them. So the last thing I'm going to do is try and talk somebody into working with us. In fact, I spend all my time trying to look for red flags why it's not a good fit. So at least get a free coaching session, fill out your cash flow cruncher in advance of that. Check out as many videos on our channel as you can beforehand. It just helps the conversation become a lot more valuable to you than if you're coming in and I have to answer a lot of basic stuff for you. So that stuff has proven to be very, very valuable. We do have an almost perfect reputation. I mean, an A+ rating with the BBB. We've done this a long time. I literally speak with thousands of people one-on-one every year. And nobody ever complains, so we must be doing something right.
Yeah, and you just signed up for a couple more 100-hour work weeks, giving away a free hour to people watching this video.
I do it all day, every day. Listen, I do 6 to 9 of those a day, Sean. So 6 to 9 hours a day I do. I do it because I'm passionate about it, and obviously it keeps our sales capacity always full. So it does turn into money for us, but organically. And so it's a win-win for everybody. I don't mind doing it. I honestly, it's the highlight of my day still. Once it's not, we won't do it anymore.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Well, this was really awesome. Thank you so much for coming on board for this one. And of course, I'm actually really looking forward to our credit conversation. I'm gonna learn a lot in that one. So thank you for your time. And Airbnb family, of course, you know the drill. If you like the video, it'll help the world know that this video is important for the YouTube algorithm. Give it a like and visit Matthew on his YouTube channel. It'll be in the description. And I'm gonna go hunt down a video that I like from him, and I'm gonna put that in the description too, just in case you're looking for like what Sean thinks you should watch on his channel. You'll get that from me. So once again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your time, and we will see you on the other side.